Don't close it. Mama can't breathe in there. Let her out. Let her out. Ike found himself standing in the middle of a wild wind of confusion. He was only 6, yet everything around him seemed too big, too heavy for his small mind to contain. He looked up at the faces of the people gathered in the room, their tears, their hushed whispers, all of it swirling around him like a terrible storm. Why was everyone so sad? Why were they crying? He glanced at the large white coffin before him, his mother's still body lying inside. Her face, once so full of warmth, was now frozen in a silence he couldn't break. She hadn't moved for hours. She has been lying motionless. Why is she sleeping for so long? Ike tapped the glass softly, hoping that maybe she was just sleeping. She had been sleeping for such a long time. Longer than he had ever seen before. "Mama," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Mama, wake up!" But nothing. She didn't stare, didn't smile, didn't open her eyes to reassure him that everything would be okay. His small fingers clenched into fists, and he banged on the glass harder. "Mama, you need to wake up now. It's time to take your medicine. You need to eat something. You haven't eaten since." People started to turn and stare, their hearts breaking as they watched the innocent boy beg his mother to wake up. But Ike did not notice them. All he could see was his mama lying there, so still, so quiet, like a dream that couldn't end. Suddenly, some men in black suits began to move toward the coffin. Ike's heart jumped. They were going to close it. He could feel it. They were going to take his mama away, and she still hadn't woken up. Panic surged inside him, and he broke into a run, pushing past his father and racing towards the coffin. "No!" he screamed, his small voice echoing through the quiet room. "Don't close it. Mama can't breathe in there. She needs to wake up. Open it! Open it!" His little fist pounded on the glass, desperation in every hit. "Mama, please wake up. You need to go home now. You need to take your medicine. You need to eat." His father rushed to him, kneeling down and pulling Ike into his arms, though Ike fought against him, kicking, trying to break free. "Let me go. Mama needs to wake up." "Ike, listen to me." His father's voice cracked as he held onto his son. "Mama isn't coming back. She's going to heaven now. She's now an angel. She watches over us now. Okay?" Ike's tear-filled eyes turned towards his father. "Heaven? Is this box the way to heaven? Can I go with her? I want to go with Mama. Please, Daddy, let me go with her to heaven." His father looked away, tears of his own streaming down his face. "No, Ike. Mama has to go by herself. You can't follow her." A few months earlier, Ike's life had been so different. His family had once been happy. They lived in a nice apartment. His parents loved each other, and his mother, Queen, would sing to him every morning as she made breakfast. His father, Kelly, though often busy, would come home from work, lifting Ike up into the air and spinning him around. They would laugh, all three of them, until their sides hurt. But things started to change when Kelly began staying out late. He said it was because of work, but the late nights became more frequent, the excuses more strained. Queen, a beautiful, strong-willed woman, began to notice. Queen had always been generous, the kind of woman who opened her heart and home to others. It was this generosity that had led her to bring Dima, her childhood friend from the village, to stay with them. Dima had been struggling in the village without work or family to support her. She was just a year or two younger than Queen, with a soft-spoken nature and the kind of beauty that was unassuming at first glance, but grew on you the more time you spent around her. Queen saw her as a sister, someone she could help, and someone who could help her with the house and looking after Ike. In the beginning, everything seemed fine. Dima was respectful, quiet, and always willing to lend a hand. But then, things changed. Kelly, Queen's husband started to pay Dima more attention. It all started innocently enough. He would ask her to run errands for him, to bring him coffee late at night while he was working. Queen didn't think much of it. After all, Dima was there to help, and her husband was often busy with work. One night, after a particularly stressful day, Kelly came home smelling of alcohol. Queen was fast asleep on the couch, exhausted from taking care of the house and looking after Ike. Dima had been cleaning in the kitchen, trying to keep things neat for the next morning. Kelly stumbled in, his eyes hazy, but as he passed the living room, his gaze lingered on Queen. She was asleep, but her legs were uncovered, her night dress slipping slightly up at times. Kelly's heart raced, not with love for his wife, but with a dangerous, forbidden desire. He stood there, watching her for a moment longer before his gaze drifted towards the kitchen. Dima was scrubbing the counters, her back to him. Without thinking, Kelly moved towards her. His footsteps were soft, but when Dima turned around, she gasped, "Sir, I don't know you were here." Kelly, under the influence of alcohol, stepped closer, his eyes dark with intent. "Queen is asleep," he whispered. "Just relax." Dima's heart pounded in her chest as he reached out and touched her arm. I don't think we should," she began, her voice shaking, but Kelly silenced her, placing a finger to her lips. "Don't worry, I'll take care of you. No one has to know, okay?" Dima watched. Dima wanted to resist, to pull away, but the weight of his promises, the power he held over her, and her own fear of what would happen if she refused, left her frozen. The first time it happened, it was over quickly, and she told herself it would never happen again, but it did. It became a dark secret between them, a forbidden affair that neither of them could admit, yet neither could stop. Kelly would find excuses to be near her, to send Queen out on errands so they could be alone, and every time Dima would try to refuse, but Kelly's promises were always the same. "Don't worry," he would say, "I will take care of everything. You will be fine." But things weren't fine. One day, Queen began to notice small things. Kelly lingering in the kitchen longer than usual. Dima looking more nervous, more guilty. She didn't want to believe it, but the signs were there. Queen, being sharp and observant, began to piece one or two things together. Then came the night that changed everything. Queen had come home earlier from a family event, and as she walked into the house, she saw Dima and Kelly sitting too close, their conversation too quiet, too intimate. The sight made her blood run cold. "What's going on here?" she asked, her voice shaking with anger. Dima jumped on her feet, her face pale. "Nothing, madam. I was just..." But Kelly interrupted her, standing up and placing himself between Queen and Dima. "Queen, you are overreacting. It's nothing." "Nothing?" Queen's voice rose, her suspicion turning to fury. "Do you take me for a fool, Kelly? I see the way you've been looking at her. Do you think I don't know?" Kelly tried to deny it, but Queen wasn't having any of it. That night, the house was filled with the sound of shouting, accusations flying between them. Dima, terrified, tried to leave, but Kelly wouldn't let her. "Stay," he ordered. "This is between me and my wife." But Queen had had enough. The trust between them was shattered, and in the heat of argument, she demanded for a divorce. Ike sat on the floor, playing with his toy cars, while his parents' voices drifted down the hallway. They weren't yelling this time, but their words were sharp, like tiny needles, pricking at the silence in the house. His mother, Queen, was speaking fast, her voice trembling with frustration, while her father, Kelly, sounded calm, almost too calm. Ike was too young to fully understand what they were arguing about, but he could feel the tension, the heaviness in the air. Queen paced the living room, wringing her hands as she faced her husband. "You, wanting me to believe there is nothing going on?" she asked, her voice shaky. "After everything I've seen, Kelly, I'm not blind. I see how you look at her, how you act around her. You've been avoiding me for weeks, and now this? You think I'm a fool? Kelly sat on the couch, leaning back with his arms crossed. He sighed, his face betraying nothing but weariness. Queen, for the last time, there is nothing between me and Dima. You are overthinking things. I would never do something like that to you. Queen stopped pacing and turned to face him, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and hurt. Then, explain why she's always around you. Why do you send me out of the house when she's here? Why do you talk to her in secret? I trusted you, Kelly, and now I don't know what to believe. Kelly stood up, his patience wearing thin. You don't trust me anymore. After everything we've been through, you are questioning my loyalty based on your suspicions. This is ridiculous. Queen, Dima, standing in the corner, kept her head bowed, pretending to busy herself with cleaning, but she could feel Queen's gaze burning into her. She had played the part of the innocent maid, the humble house help from the village, but the guilt she carried was growing heavier with each passing day. She could still feel Kelly's touch from the first night, his whispered promises echoing in her mind, and now she was trapped in a lie. I swear, there is nothing between us. Dima finally spoke, her voice soft and trembling, with just the right amount of fear. I'm here to serve you and the family. I've never crossed any boundaries. Please believe me. God sees my heart. Queen stared at her for a long moment, her eyes searching for something, some crack in the lie, some hint of truth. But Dima was good, too good. Her innocent expression, her quiet demeanor, all made Queen second-guess herself. She wanted to believe them. She wanted to trust her husband. And so, with a heavy heart, Queen let the matter go, at least for now. It's fine, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. I'll believe you for now, but if I ever find out you are lying to me, you won't, Kelly interrupted, moving toward her and placing a hand on her shoulder. There is nothing going on. Let's not let this ruin our family. He even promised her a surprise for her upcoming birthday, a gift to make up all the arguments, all the suspicion. It calmed her for a moment, and Queen, being the kind-hearted woman she was, let herself be convinced that perhaps she was just imagining things. She wanted to believe that the man she loved and the father of her child wouldn't betray her. Weeks passed, and the tension in the house seemed to ease, at least on the surface, but deep down, Queen still had her doubts. One evening, Queen was sitting in the living room, going through the usual household tasks. It had been a long day, and she could feel the weight of exhaustion tugging at her, but there was still work to be done. She heard the washing machine hum in the background. Dima must have been doing the laundry. Suddenly, a loud tongue from the laundry room broke the silence, like something heavy had fallen. Setting aside her paperwork, Queen made her way towards the noise. When she entered the laundry room, she found Dima kneeling by the washing machine, practically picking up clothes that had spilled on the floor. Is everything alright, Dima? Queen asked, noticing her panic expression. Yes, sister, Dima replied, her voice tense as she quickly grabbed a few pieces of clothing and tossed them into the laundry basket. Just drop some clothes. But something seemed off. Dima's movements were rushed, almost frantic. Queen's eyes scanned the floor, where a small white stick had slid out from a pocket of the laundry. A pregnancy test. Queen bent down and reached for it before Dima could react. Her fingers closed around the test and she stood up, her eyes widened. The two bold lines stared back at her, confirming her worst fear. It was positive. Queen turned the test in her hand, her heart pounding. Her mind raced as she looked at Dima, who was now standing frozen, her face pale. Queen's breath caught in her throat. She knew what this meant, and the betrayer hit her like a wave. Dima, Queen's voice trembled, fury rising in her chest. What is this? Dima stood silent, unable to meet her gaze, her hands twisting nervously. Queen's grip tightened around the test as she pieced together the truth. This wasn't just a mistake, it was confirmation of something far darker. Her mind flashed back to the late night, the suspicious glances between Kelly and Dima, the feeling she had been trying to push away for weeks. Her voice rose, filled with rage and disbelief. You are pregnant? For him? Dima's face drained of color, but she quickly regained her composure. It's not what you think, sister. I'm pregnant, but it's not. I didn't mean for this to happen. Queen's voice rose. You didn't mean for this to happen? After everything I've done for you, I took you from the village, gave you a place to stay, treated you like family, and this is how you repay me by getting pregnant under my roof? Tears filled Dima's eyes as she dropped to her knees. Please, madam, forgive me. I did not want this. It just happened. I swear, I did not plan it. Just as the confrontation reached its peak, Kenny walked into the room. He saw the pregnancy test in Queen's hand and the look of betrayal on her face. He knew there was no denying it anymore. It's true, he said, his voice low but steady. Dima is pregnant and the baby is mine. Queen's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. She had suspected something, but hearing it confirmed by her husband was like a dagger to the chest. You are having a baby with her? She whispered, her voice shaking. You betrayed me. Kelly moved closer, but Queen stepped back, her body trembling with anger. I can't believe this. You had an affair with the woman I trusted, the woman I took like my sister. I brought her into this house. She's carrying my child, Kelly said, his tone matter of fact, as though that was all that mattered. Queen's face twisted with disbelief. So what? You want her to stay here and raise your child while I watch? You expect me to accept this after everything we've been through? I can't abandon my own child, Kelly replied coldly. She's pregnant and I want the baby to stay. Queen's rage boiled over. This is too much. You've humiliated me, betrayed me, and now you want me to live with the woman who is carrying your child? No, I won't do it. I can't. Days passed, but the anger in the house grew more unbearable with each argument. Queen couldn't stand the way Kelly and Dima now openly shared glances as if she were invisible. She had once been the queen of this house, and now she felt like nothing. She couldn't bear it anymore. Then, on Queen's birthday, something happened that shattered whatever remained of her spirit. Kelly had promised her a special gift, something to make up for the tension and heartbreak. That morning, a brand new car arrived in the driveway, and Queen's heart lifted slightly. Maybe this was his way of making things right. But then, the driver stepped out and handed the key not to Queen, but to Dima. Queen's watch stopped. She watched in stunned silence as Kelly smiled at Dima, congratulating her on the gift. Dima's eyes sparkled with excitement, and she couldn't hide her smugness as she glanced at Queen. The betrayal was complete. Queen's fist clenched. That was supposed to be my gift, she whispered, her voice trembling. For my birthday. Kelly barely looked at her. Dima needs the car more than you. She will be taking care of the baby. You understand? Queen's face grew hot with anger, but it wasn't until later that day that things finally exploded. Dima, growing bolder, began to walk around the house as if she were the real wife, issuing orders to the other housemates. She even dared to speak sharply to Queen. I don't know why you are still here, Dima said one afternoon, her voice laced with arrogance. You know Kelly doesn't want you around anymore. Why don't you make it easier for everyone and leave? That was it. That was the final straw. Queen, overwhelmed with hurt and fury, slapped Dima across the face. Dima screamed dramatically, falling to the ground as if she had been mortally wounded. She clutched her belly, crying out for Kelly. She eats me! She's trying to hurt the baby! Kelly stormed into the room, his face livid. Queen! How could you? He shouted, rushing to Dima's side. She's pregnant. You could have hurt her. Queen's heart twisted. I'm your wife, Kelly, and she's the one who destroyed our home. You are defending her? Kelly's eyes were cold, and he helped Dima to her feet. You need to leave, Queen. This house isn't your home anymore. Queen stared at him in disbelief, her world crumbling around her. You are choosing her over me? After everything we have been through, Kelly didn't answer. He simply turned his back on her, leading Dima out of the room. A week later, Queen found herself and Ike in a small rundown apartment, far from the life they had known. The betrayer had left her shattered, but she couldn't let Ike see how broken she truly was. She had to be strong for him, and the pain didn't stop. Queen's health began to deteriorate rapidly. She became weaker with each passing day. At first, she thought it was the stress, the constant heartbreak, the sleepless nights, and the weight of being a single mother. But then, strange things started happening. She felt sick after eating, her energy drained in ways that didn't make sense. Queen thought back to the last few months with Dima in the house. There had been little incidents, like the time Dima was mixing something into her tea, claiming it was just honey to soothe her cough. One day, while in the market, Queen collapsed. Ike, who had been with her, cried for help, and passerbys rushed to her side. An ambulance took her to the hospital, where she was treated for severe poisoning. The doctors, after running tests, revealed the shocking truth. Queen had been ingesting poison slowly over a long period. Her mind reeled. Poison? Who would poison her? Then it all clicked into place. The strange sickness, the tea, Dima's constant presence in the kitchen. She remembered the day when she caught Dima mixing something into her drink. At the time, Dima had brushed it off, claiming it was just adding honey. But now, Queen realized that Dima had been poisoning her all along. The betrayal was too much to bear. Queen sat in the hospital bed, her mind racing, replaying every moment, every clue she had. She had taken Dima in, saved her from a life of poverty in the village, treated her like family, like her sister, and this was how Dima had repaid her. First, by sleeping with her husband and carrying his child, and then by trying to kill her bit by bit every day. Ike stood by her bedside, his small hand gripping hers, his innocent eyes wide with fear. "Mama, are you going to be okay?" he asked softly. Queen forced a smile, though tears stung the corners of her eyes. "I'll be fine, Ike," she whispered. "Don't worry, Mama is going to be okay." But inside, Queen wasn't sure. Her body was weak, her mind shattered. She didn't know how much longer she could hold on. The poison had done its damage, and although the doctors were doing their best to save her, the future looked bleak. As Queen lay in bed, her strength fading, memories of her past came flooding back. Memories of the friendship she once shared with Dima. They had been inseparable, growing up together in a small village. Back then, they shared everything, their dreams, their secrets, their fears. Queen had always excelled in school, while Dima, though bright, struggled with the hardship of village life. They were best friends, though Queen older. She took Dima like a sister from another mother, but fate had a different path for each of them. Queen could still remember the day she left the village for the city. She had been granted a scholarship, the kind of opportunity that people in their village rarely got. Dima had cried when they said goodbye, promising that no matter what, they would always remain close. "I will come back for you," Queen had promised, hugging Dima tightly. "I will never forget you, no matter where I go." But life in the city had been fast-paced and full of new experiences. Though they wrote letters back and forth at first, the distance between them grew, not just physically, but emotionally. Queen's words had expanded, while Dima remained the same. Years later, after Queen had married Kelly, she returned to the village. It was meant to be a joyous reunion, but when she saw Dima again, she was shocked by the changes. Dima looked worn and tired, the weight of village life etched into her face. The spark that Queen remembered from their childhood had dimmed, replaced by a deep sadness. They sat together under the old mango tree, where they had shared so many childhood secrets. Dima's voice trembled as she spoke of the hardship she had endured, the poverty that had consumed resumed her family after Queen left. I couldn't continue my education, Dima said quietly, her eyes downcast. My parents didn't have the money. I stayed behind, and it's been one struggle after another. Queen had listened, her heart breaking for her old friend. How could their lives have taken such different paths? She wanted to help, but wasn't sure how. You've always been the strong one, Dima, Queen said softly. You survived when others would have given up. I don't feel strong anymore, Dima whispered. I can't do this alone. I want a better life. Please, Queen, help me. It was the desperation in Dima's voice that convinced Queen to act. She had returned to the city and spoken to Kelly about bringing Dima to stay with them. At first, Kelly had been reluctant, but eventually he agreed. Dima had come to live with them shortly after, and at first, everything seemed fine. But then the shift began. Back in the present, Queen's thoughts drifted as she lay on the bed, her body weakened by the poison that had slowly claimed her life. Dima, the same friend she had once saved, was the one responsible for her suffering. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain. She closed her eyes, remembering the day she had found out about Dima and Kelly, the arguments, the lies, the feeling of being replaced in her own home. It had all been too much to bear. After she was discharged from the hospital, life became a blur for Queen. She tried to stay strong for Ike, but her health continued to decline. She couldn't walk, and their savings were running out. The apartment they lived in was small and cold, a far contrast from the warm, comfortable home they had once shared with Kelly. Ike did his best to help. Even though he was only 6, he would try to make her simple meals, bringing her water, and tidy up the small space they lived in. But he didn't understand why his mother was so weak, why she couldn't get out of bed most days, and why she didn't laugh or smile like she used to. One day, Ike came home from his nursery school, his teacher having dropped him off as usual. He ran into the apartment, calling out for his mother. Mama, I'm home. But the apartment was quiet, too quiet. Ike looked around, his small heart pounding in his chest. He found his mother lying on the couch, her eyes closed, her face pale. Mama, he whispered, stepping closer. She didn't move. Mama, wake up, he said, his voice trembling as he shook her gently, but she didn't respond. His small hands shook as she tried to wake her again, tears peeling from his eyes. Mama, please wake up. I'm hungry. But Queen lay still, unmoving, motionless. Ike's cries filled the small apartment, echoing off the walls. He didn't understand what was happening. All he knew was that his mother wouldn't wake up, no matter how hard he tried. As Queen took her final breath, she wished she had never brought Dima into her life again. She wished she had seen the signs sooner, before it was too late. She wished she followed her instincts when she suspected something. But now, as the darkness crept in, she could do nothing but remember the girl Dima once was and wonder where it had all gone wrong. A neighbor, hearing Ike's cries, rushed into the apartment. When they saw Queen lying there, their face went pale. Call an ambulance, they said quickly, running to the phone. But deep down, they knew it was too late. The ambulance arrived within minutes, its siren piercing through the quietness of the street. But the neighbor knew it was too late. Ike stood by the door, clutching the hand of the neighbor who had called for help, his wide eyes filled with confusion. He didn't understand why everyone was rushing, why they were trying to help his mother when all she needed was to wake up. The paramedics walked quickly, their faces tense and focused as they moved Queen's still body onto the stretcher. Ike watched as they covered her with a blanket, and a tiny flicker of hope packed in his chest. Maybe they could make her better. Maybe she was just very tired. As they wheeled her out, one of the paramedics knelt beside Ike, his voice gentle but firm. We are going to take your mom to the hospital, okay? He said. You are going to stay with your neighbor for now. Ike nodded slowly, still not fully grasping the weight of what was happening. His small hand tightened around the neighbor's, but his eyes never left the stretcher as it disappeared into the ambulance. Hours later, Ike found himself in a cold, sterile room. The lights were too bright, the sounds too quiet. His father, Kelly, sat across him, his face pale and drawn. He hadn't said much since he arrived, only that Ike's mother was very sick and the doctors were doing everything they could, but it wasn't enough. When the doctor finally entered the room, his expression said everything that Kelly already knew but had refused to accept. Queen was gone. Ike, too young to understand the finality of death, turned to his father. "When is Mama coming home?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Kelly didn't answer at first. His throat tightened and he squeezed his son's hand, pulling him closer. "She is not coming home, Ike," Kelly finally said, his voice cracking. "Mama is gone to heaven now. She's now an angel." Ike stared at him, his small face twisted in confusion. "Heaven? But she will come back, right? She just needs to rest." Kelly shook his head, unable to speak. The reality of the situation weighed down on him, crushing any hope that lingered. He couldn't explain to his son that his mother would never walk through the door again, that she wouldn't sing to him, hold him, or tell him stories anymore. And as much as it broke his heart, he knew that from this moment on, Ike's life would never be the same. The day of the funeral arrived quickly, the heavy clouds hanging low in the sky, mirroring the sadness that filled the hearts of those gathered. Ike stood at the front of the church, his small frame draped by the sea of mourners dressed in black. The white coffin sat in the center, a painful reminder of the finality of death. Ike didn't understand why everyone was crying. He didn't understand why his mother wasn't waking up. She had always slept when she was tired, but this time was different. She had been asleep for so long, and no matter how hard he knocked on the glass top of the coffin, she wouldn't open her eyes. "Mama," he whispered, his voice trembling as he pressed his small hand against the cold glass. "Wake up! We need to go home." The room was filled with the soft sound of weeping, but Ike's plea went unheard. His father, standing behind him, placed a hand on Ike's shoulder, his face contorted with grief. "She is gone, Ike," Kelly said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "She is gone." Ike turned to his father. Confusion still edged on his young face. "But she's coming back?" Kelly shook his head, tears brimming in his eyes. "No, son, she's not coming back." As the coffin was closed, Ike's panic rose. He didn't understand why they were taking her away. "No!" he cried, his small hands reaching for the glass. "Don't close it. Mama can't breathe in there. Let her out. Let her out." The mourners gasped, their hearts breaking as they watched the innocent boy trying to make sense of the unimaginable. Kelly, struggling to hold back his own tears, knelt down and pulled Ike into his arms. "She is gone," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Mama is gone." The days following the funeral passed in a blur. Kelly took Ike back to the house they had shared before everything fell apart. But the warmth that once filled their home was gone, replaced by a cold, hollow silence. Kelly, consumed by grief and guilt, hardly spoke to his son. He buried himself in work, trying to forget the pain that now defined his life. Dima, who had moved into the house with Kelly after Queen's death, took over the household. She was heavily pregnant now, and her once kind demeanor had turned icy and distant. Ike, only a few years old, found himself lost in a world he no longer understood. His mother was gone, his father was distant, and the woman who had once been a part of their family now treated him like a burden. The house, once filled with love and laughter, had become a place of neglect and indifference. When Dima finally gave birth to her son, the house erupted in celebration. For the first time in in months. Kelly smiled as he held his newborn son, but for Ike, the birth of his half-brother only made him feel more alone. Dima doted on her new baby, and Ike, once the center of attention, was now treated as an afterthought. Dima's disdain for Ike grew with each passing day. She saw him as a threat, the firstborn son, the child of the woman she had betrayed. She feared that one day Ike would inherit everything, leaving her and her son with nothing. It wasn't long before Dima began to actively neglect Ike. She would send him to bed without dinner, make him do all the chores, and ignore him whenever he asked for help. Kelly, too caught up in his new role as a father to his newborn, didn't notice how his firstborn son was slowly fading into the background. One fateful day, Dima decided to take Ike out with her. It had been a while since they had gone anywhere together, and Ike, desperate for attention, eagerly followed her, hoping for a glimpse of the love she once knew. They walked through the crowded marketplace, Dima carrying her newborn son, while Ike trailed behind, trying to keep up. But as they wandered through the busy streets, Dima's true intentions became clear. She had no plans of keeping Ike close. Her fear that Ike would one day take over everything her son deserved had driven her into a desperate decision. As they reached a bustling corner of the market, Dima stopped by a stall, pretending to browse. Ike, distracted by the noise and the people, didn't notice when Dima slipped away. He continued to wander, assuming she was nearby, until the crowd swallowed him up. When he finally realized he was alone, panic set in. "Auntie Dima!" he called, his voice trembling. "Auntie Dima, where are you?" But there was no response. Ike ran through the market, tears streaming down his face as he searched for her, but she was gone. She had left him behind, abandoning him to the chaos of the world, hoping that without him, her son would be the rightful heir to Kelly's fortune. My beautiful people, if you want to know how this story unfolds, don't forget to like, subscribe, and write "continue. This story is interesting" in the comment section. Kindly tell us where you are watching from. I would love to know and interact with you in the comment section. I will see you in the next part of the story. Till then, stay kind, blessed, and positive.